There we go. How's that?
Very good, sir. We're currently at 12 members on. Actually, make that 13.
13, so we're good to go, correct?
Yes, sir. We'll have to
All right.
go forward, but we're good to go.
All right, I'd like to call the order the meeting of the 55th Police Training and Standards Commission. This is a virtual meeting. I think we all have a copy of the agenda. Today is January 24th, 2024, and I'd like to do a roll call. Chaka, if you could.
Mr. Clyde Boatwright. Sheriff Joe Gamble.
I'm here.
Ms. Danita Hurley.
Here.
Ms. Amanda Kojeski. Chief Carl Schinner.
Here.
Mr. Richard Gibson. Chief Michael Spalding.
I'm here.
Major Derek Loeffler.
Good morning. I'm here.
Chief Tyrone Collington.
Good morning, I'm here.
Mr. John Moses.
Good morning. I'm here.
Major Ron Alford.
Good morning. Present.
Mr. Raymond Kelly.
Good morning, here.
Mr. Dirk Butler.
Good morning.
Ms. Sue Radcliffe.
Here.
Ms. Ganesha Martin. Mr. Corey Jeweler. Mr. Patrick Campbell.
Present.
Colonel Roland Butler.
Present also.
Colonel, we have a quorum, sir.
Okay, I'd like to thank you all for participating in today's meeting. We'll go ahead and start with the commission activities report. Mr. Silver.
Colonel, would you like to approve the minutes from last meeting first, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. We can certainly go back and do that. I skipped that. We each have a copy of the minutes from last meeting. Can you take a minute and peruse those? I'll give you a couple seconds so I see a couple nods in the affirmative. Ron is nodding. Mr. Moses. Mr. Kelly. I get one more nod and I'm going to go with it. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Motion to approve the minutes from the October 4th meeting.
So moved.
Second it.
I have a first. We have a second.
I second it.
Shaka, do you have the order?
Alderman Campbell. Got it.
Okay. Is there any need for any discussion, or can we go straight to a vote, please?
We can do a voice vote, sir, if you'd like.
Yes. Can we go straight to the voice vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
Hearing no opposition. Motion passes.
Thank you, Colonel.
All right. Now we can go to number 2, the commission activities report. Mr. Silver, please.
Thank you, Colonel. We've streamlined the commission report to kind of focus more on the information that directly impacts the commission's activities, and I'll present the information now. First, we're going to talk about the certifications unit. Currently, in Maryland, there are 15,651 certified police officers in the state of Maryland. In 2023, 485 probationary certificates were issued. And in 2023, 922 police officers separated from their agency. What we'll do in future meetings is we will do it quarterly, but we will update it till we have a final tally for the year. In 2023, the certifications unit approved entry-level police academies and 6 comparative compliance courses. They also approved 2,534 additional courses, which primarily are for in-service or firearms or defensive tactics credit. And they certified 2,850 new police instructors were approved last year. The auditing unit in 2023 conducted 12 entry-level academy audits. As a result of these audits, 3 academies had to develop mitigation plans, but subsequently all academies have been closed. So any issues found have been addressed. In 2023, the audits unit also conducted 20 in-service audits. There were no mitigation plans associated with these audits, and they have all been closed. And in 23, they also conducted 17 selection standard audits. Of these results, 12 agencies had to develop mitigation plans, and subsequently, all audits have been closed on those as well. And the primary reason for the mitigation plans and the selection standards audits were related to not testing at the proper drug levels, and we have addressed that. Colonel, that is the commission report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Do we have any questions on the commission report? Hearing no questions, are we ready to move to the next issue? Okay, next issue, legal issues. Mr. Mayhew.
Mr. Mayhew, no issues?
None other than the one we're going to perhaps discuss next, which is the WMATA issue. You'll find an attachment in the packet that briefs the legal issue from both our perspective and that of WMATA. Their counsel prepared a rather lengthy and thorough explanation of their view of the law, which we don't disagree with. So it's our view that we should continue to certify their officers, or the MTPD officers.
Okay, looking at the cross traffic there, and I did read the letter from WMATA. 4 pages. I'm glad we're able to come to resolution. Is WMATA on the line, or did WMATA want to add anything to the discussion?
No, sir. In subsequent discussion with WMATA to go to the old business, we were able to address the concerns, and based on the guidance provided by Mr. Mayhew, we can continue to certify them. We have the authority to do that.
Okay, sounds good. I'm sure that they will be happy to get that information and start moving towards their direction to develop their department there. Next up, I see new objective timeline from Lieutenant Chatfield, representative of the Training Directors Association.
Oh, yes, Lieutenant Chatfield, are you on the line, sir?
I am, sir. Good morning. How are you all?
Doing great.
I'm ready to go if y'all are ready.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning. So just to give an update on new objectives after our Police Academy directors meeting at the end of last year, everybody is moving along towards the goal of getting them done by July. What we have run into at the course of the meeting we had, it was well attended, by the way, with all the academies across the state. What we found was some of the bigger agencies included, but most agencies are running a little bit behind with staffing, and obviously in the light of the current recruiting situation, trying to run academies consecutively on top of each other is tying up a lot of the staff from the academies around the state. But the other issue that we ran into that I'm looking for some guidance on today is there was some discrepancy in the way the commission approved the language for the objectives. It was the understanding of some in the panel that the any academy that was approved to start after July 1 was the language that was intended, and then there was some under the impression that it was approved to be any academy that started after July 1. So that does make a difference in whether it's approved or whether it started. Because of that discrepancy and because of the time frame that we're under right now with trying to get these objectives done, which is a lot of work, even for the larger academies such as the one I represent. It's a lot of man hours to get all these things together, and it's also, again, based upon the schedule of the academies that are coming. It would be my request on behalf of the Training Directors Association that we move to provide a little bit of a buffer for the implementation of these objectives. Particularly, we spoke about looking at October 1st, and it was favored by the group that we have the language to be specific to say any academy that is approved after October 1st would be affected on the new objectives.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant Chatfield. Any discussion on the matter? Mr. Silver, Mr. Malady, anything from the commission on that request?
I think that we got to watch this wording because we say approved after October 1st. Somebody could do an approval in September or June. That's the same boat we're in now. Maybe we should say any academy that runs after December 31st or December 1st and make it'd be cleaner to make it for the calendar year.
Any feedback from the attorneys in the room?
I'll admit to not really understanding the issue, sir.
Okay, Greg, can we go back and water that down just a little bit? I think some of us get it, but we want to be a little cleaner so we get the verbiage right.
Yes,
To
Colonel,
prevent
absolutely.
The Mr. Moses loophole, I'll call
Correct.
it. He is spot on with that. People will play with it.
Correct. And I don't disagree with that. And I'm not going to sit here and propose the exact language, but what I can say in the historical context of why I'm here now requesting this. So the way that we interpreted, again, my interpretation, I can say specifically, was that I thought that it was any class that started. So if I was going to start a class on July the 2nd, as it's currently written, then I would need to use the new objectives. There was some that understood that the commission intention when they originally approved it was any class that is approved, so that we understand, for those in the room not familiar with the application process for an academy start, sometimes in academies, in cases such as our own, or I know Mr. Moses at the last meeting had a similar situation, we may submit an approval for a class that's going to start in August, but we're going to submit the approval in in June, several months in advance, so we can get our schedules locked in and we're prepared to go. So that makes a considerable difference if we're submitting something ahead of time so that we can lock in the schedule in June, whether or not it's going to be approved under the old objectives or the new objectives. So theoretically, if that class didn't start till August, but we submitted it in June, then we would have a situation where we would be using the old objectives, even though we're starting a class after July. So my understanding was from the room, I guess there was the commission had looked back, or I guess Mr. Silver had attempted to determine what the recording reflected from what was approved by the commission. And there was questions raised about what was specifically said in the motion under the original approval. So I want to get clarification on what the exact intention is so that we all know whether it's approved or whether it's started. Again, I don't know that I have an objection either way of how the language is written, nor any other academy would. We just want to make sure that we all are on the exact same page with how the approvals are going to be granted and when the objectives are truly going to be in effect.
Okay. Hearing that, let's make sure we get it right the first time. I do see Katie has a hand raised, Mr. Moses also, but let's go with Kelly Browning first off. She entered an entry into the chat. The academy start date will follow the objectives that are in effect at that time. Kelly, is there anything else you want to add to that?
You're on mute, Kelly.
Forgive, sorry. What the lieutenant is saying is correct. Like, they may apply for a course well in advance, but if the objectives aren't written or completed at that time when he submits it, he's got the wrong objectives for that August 1st start date if he doesn't have them completed yet. So from my team's perspective, we approve programs based on the objectives that are in force on the day the academy starts on day one. So however you guys decide, it doesn't matter to us. You just tell us what the effective date is of that objective, or that objective list. And when the course start date is, they will be using the objectives that are approved at that time. So if we're using the old objectives from the previous set, everything until December 1st, if you say on December 1st, these new objectives are okay, then any class that has a start date of December 1st or after must have the new objectives with that program approval request.
Okay, that definitely sounds like it.
With taught and tested broken down. From my team's perspective, the date that you guys choose does not matter as long as we know what the effective date is that you're using. If that provides that feedback and help for those making application.
I think that's a significant clarification there. We jump over to Katie and then Mr. Moses.
Colonel Butler, it's me. One thing I think the cleanest way for us to do it, sir, is to identify a drop dead date when once you start an academy, the new objectives have to be used. But I think we also have to give consideration that there are some academies out there that have already moved forward on the new objectives, and we allow them to use those new objectives earlier, simply based off what they put in their application for an academy. So I think that'll clean it up. For example, if we wanted to go with the December 1st date, we would say any academy that starts after December 1st must use the new objectives. But if you start an academy beforehand, since we've already approved the new entry-level objectives, you'll be allowed to use those entry-level objectives in your academy if you're prepared to do so.
Okay.
My question was that I wanted Kelly to say something. But my question, Kelly, is it cleaner for a January or December date for you all? Because we go by calendar year. Does it matter?
No, it does not matter to us. You tell us what the date is and we will follow that.
I make the date. Can I make a motion, Colonel?
Sure.
I like December 1st. After December 1st, everybody has to use the new objectives.
Okay. Hearing your motion, the first thing that pops to mind, it's going to be the difference between, or what changes were made after December 1st versus now. Wayne, do you all have a comparison or contrast available that you could ship out to us? Or we have
The old objectives and the new objectives, sir, or?
yes, the difference, the variance between those two. My concern is, do we have something that's truly going to put us in a precarious position? You know, all we need is one incident and everybody's going to look at, you know, what we've decided to do, what our intention was, and
Well, I
did
tell you,
we do what's best?
Well, in this meeting, and the commission, I think it was July, Wayne, that or back in April, you did a comparison that from the job task that we were meeting the old objectives, just the wording was different. You did a comparison?
Yeah, Colonel, in working this project, even the things that we added, these new objectives dealing with de-escalation, use of force, and active shooter were the primary areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that academies weren't teaching that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it wasn't a required objective associated with it. I think Lieutenant Chatfield would agree with that. So I don't see any significant disparity from what is actually being taught in the academies if we set it at December 1st. But like I said before, I would like to give some consideration to those academies that are prepared to start using the new objectives now.
Okay.
With the July 1st date.
Lieutenant Chatfield, to put me at ease, any feedback on that?
No real objection to anything that's been mentioned so far. Again, our hope was to get at least to October 1st to give some of the academies a little bit more time. I certainly favor the December 1st motion that Mr. Moses made. I'm not so worried about how the language is on behalf of the training directors, as long as it gets us a little bit more time. And I am aware, as Mr. Silver said, and I apologize, I didn't mention this, that there is some academies that expect that they can be ahead of that July schedule. So again, I think it behooves us as a state, as a commission to, and from the academy perspective, to allow them to move to those new objectives as soon as they're prepared to, with the drop dead date of December 1st, as Mr. Silver and Mr. Moses have recommended.
Okay.
And Colonel, I think that most academies will have a 4-month, they're going to have all their objectives done 4 months before it starts anyways to get the approval. So I think that if we set December 1st, it gives them that leeway if there's something goes wrong and runs it through their legal teams and everything like that.
Okay. Sounds good to me. If we could go back to Mr. Moses' motion. Excuse me. Back to Mr. Moses' motion. Do I have a first on his motion to delay the start date until, I think you said December 1st? Or was it 31st?
It doesn't matter. 1st, 31st,
Well, how about, since we're on the record here, could you repeat your motion as you had it? My apologies.
I make a motion to implement the new objectives. Any class that's approved after December 1st. Did I say that right? Runs
you are.
after December 1st.
Okay.
Second.
To allow could you amend your motion to allow academies to use new objectives before that date?
Yes, and allow academies to implement the new objectives prior.
All right. We have a second. Who was the second?
Chief Collington.
Okay. I saw a hand raised. I believe it was Kelly, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just be sure that when you're submitting your program, if you are using the new objectives, let's be sure that the training directors know that they should indicate that to us so that when we're looking at the list, we can notate that program for the audit team so that they know which objectives they're auditing when they come out to do the audit.
Absolutely.
Noted.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Could we go for the vote then? Shaka?
Mr. Boatright? Sheriff Gamble?
Yes.
Ms. Hurley?
Yes.
Ms. Kojewski? Chief Shinner?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Chief Spalding?
Yes.
Major Loeffler?
Yes.
Chief Collington?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes,
Major Alford?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Butler? Mr. Dirk Butler?
Yes.
Ms. Ratcliffe?
Yes.
who is this?
Ms. Martin?
Hey, can you call?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Jeweler? Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Colonel Butler?
Yes. Any opposed?
No comments unanimous, so those members are available.
Hearing none, motion carries. All right, our next topic, regulation update, Mr. Silver.
Thank you, Colonel. Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I just want to give you an update. As many of you know, the commission staff has been doing a full review of our general regulation that applies the standards for certifying police officers and academies, pretty much our main regulation. And based off guidance provided by the commission, we're currently looking at the drug standards. I just want to give you an update. We will have that information available by April. And we've also reviewed selection standards as well as application certification standards. And what we found, ladies and gentlemen, just to give you a brief update, is that there's a lot of confliction between different parts of the regulation. So it's not as simplistic as when we did the out-of-state officer, where we just kind of changed the area here and area there, and we made the change. We're going back to make sure that we get it right and that we minimize those conflictions throughout the document. So I really just wanted to give an update to the commission members on where we were going, and we anticipate that we will have something for you to review at the April meeting.
Sounds good. Any discussion on that? Okay. Hearing none, let's get to the next topic here. Looks like a change to the April commission date.
Thank you, Colonel. When we approved in October the commission dates for 2024, unbeknownst to commission staff and many of the commission members, that date conflicts with a conference that many commission members will be at, including some of the staff members. So we are proposing that we change the April commission date to April 24th.
April 24th.
And Colonel, it was originally scheduled for April 17th, sir.
Correct. Any concerns from anyone?
Mr. Kelly.
I see a thumbs up from Mr. Kelly. Hearing none. Mr. Silva, does this actually require a vote, or are we just able to agree on the new date?
Could we just take a voice vote, just have it on the record, sir?
Certainly. Motion, please. Someone.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Or I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Spalding.
I'll second it, Gamble.
Thanks, Joe. All right. Shaka, can we get a vote on a motion to move the date from the 17th to April 24th, 2024, please?
Those in favor of changing the April commission date to April 24th, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you, Colonel.
Yes, sir. All right, looks like we're on to new business. I think we're moving a little bit ahead of schedule here, which is a good thing. Back to Mr. Silver.
Thank you, sir. Wanted to give commission members the opportunity to voice any comments or questions they may have regarding Senate Bill 256. Senate Bill 256 is a draft of a bill that has been put in previously the last 3 years, which changes, it doesn't change the makeup as the summary says, so to speak. The same members will be on it. But what it does, it really cleans up some things in the bill, such as there's multiple places in the current Public Safety Act that identify that the commission will develop when we've already developed them. And what we're really doing now is we're maintaining those things. The other thing that it does, ladies and gentlemen, is that the way the Public Safety Act is currently written is there's a lot of mandated training requirements that are based on usually a 3-year, but not always, timeline to maintain the selection standards for individual officers. That can make it very difficult from an auditing perspective because you can have multiple officers that you're auditing from the same department who met that requirement in 1 of 3 years. So what we're requesting in this bill is to change it to, we don't change the mandates. They still have to be done on the time frame identified by the General Assembly, but it would allow the commission every year to say, okay, everybody's doing electronic stalking this year to meet this requirement. And then we would post that to all of the academy directors, all the agencies by August 1st, and they could modify their in-service program as needed. The other thing that it does is that it reverts back to the old system of the superintendent of the state police is the current or the permanent chair of the commission, and we will still vote for a vice chair, as opposed to currently we vote for a chair and a vice chair, which would happen, the next time that would happen would be in April. And that's all I have. I stand by for questions, sir.
Sheriff Campbell, I see a hand raised.
Yeah, we took this up at the Maryland Chiefs and Maryland Sheriffs Association meeting the other day, our legislative meeting. We were concerned about the permanent appointment of the superintendent. No offense, Colonel.
Understood.
But, you know, not just a couple of years ago, a chief of police was the commission chair. And then prior to that was Troy Berry out of Charles County. And I think they both did a great job. So I'm not sure why that would be just a permanent role of the superintendent where the commission would have no say in who's the chair, which the other commissions and boards I sit on, we vote for that as the board or the chair. And then I have an issue with page 13, bottom of the page of the bill. The commission shall develop a test and training for implicit bias, subject to the availability of implicit bias testing standards. We tried to accomplish this several years ago when I was on the commission, and we learned that there was no implicit bias test that we could find nationally. It was a national recognized test. And maybe, I've been off the commission for whatever it was, a year and a half or maybe 2 years. So maybe there is some new information of that. If there is, I'd like to hear about it. Now, I understand the implicit bias training. But if it's a pass-fail test, at least a couple of years ago, there was no such test nationally that was nationally recognized, and the commission spent considerable time looking into that. Thanks.
Thank you, Sheriff Katie. I think somebody in the room there at Sykesville has a question.
Yes, just to address Sheriff Gamble's concerns regarding the implicit bias. Our interpretation, that hasn't been changed by us, that was in the bill as part of the Public Safety Act. We didn't change that because it's subject to availability. So what commission staff does is we routinely evaluate and review to see if any test is available. But Sheriff Gamble was right, at this time there is none. So we'll just continue to monitor that every year to see if something has changed and a test is now available.
Very well. Any further discussions or concerns? Corey Jeweler, I see a hand raised.
Yeah. I was just wondering if there are any specific standards that we are looking for to develop that test. Just a quick Google showed that Harvard has quite a few implicit bias tests available online.
Mr. Jeweler, yeah, we actually looked at those, and the problem with them is that they're more for self-awareness, and they're not something that is established that can be a yes, no, pass, fail, because because of the intricacies of the test. That's the issue that we've had, but we will continue to monitor the situation.
All right, understood. Thank you.
Ms. Ratcliffe?
Yes, I wanted to bring up the, I think it's on page 2, line 13. And just for some clarification, or maybe there isn't any, in regards to a mental health professional, means a person certified or licensed to provide mental health services under the health occupations article. So I assume this is in regards to the mental health assessments every 2 years. Is that correct? So if
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
So if it is there, I know that I would want some clarification because a mental health professional is anybody that's licensed or certified. So it could mean bachelor's, master's, or doctorate, and that might be what it's meant to be, open with that, but it caused some confusion in my mind.
Ms. Ratcliffe, we recommended that change because, and actually it's been in the bill to mirror the language that's in our regulation to make it similar to that. And it wouldn't just be the mental health assessment, it would also be the initial evaluations done of an officer, an applicant to be a police officer.
Okay.
I just had one question in regards to the human trafficking one on page 9. Does that include, and it could also, what is it, the labor trafficking as well? Is that all inclusive when we talk about the human trafficking portion of this?
Yes, sir. Based on having taught that course, yeah, it would also include labor trafficking as well.
Okay.
Sheriff Gamble again, please.
Yeah, sorry. Just so you know, the Maryland Chiefs and the Maryland Sheriff's Association are going to support this with an amendment on the superintendent deal. We took a vote on it yesterday. That's all.
Okay. Ms. Hurley?
Yes, thank you. Question, can you, I think this was covered, but can someone explain again the purpose and impact of deleting, what is this, paragraph 6, the training requirements that start on page 6?
Yes, Mr. Hurley, they haven't been completely deleted, they've been moved. And that is so that, you know, we could add the language that the commission would be the decider on, not the time frame for teaching these topics, that came from the General Assembly, but with the amount of time, but actual what had to be taught year by year to make it easier on the auditors.
Okay, and where is it relocated to? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Page 8, line 32, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
One more question, Colonel. On page 17, I just want to know about the wording. For purposes of this subsection, the commission shall follow the procedures required for a hearing board under the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights and the officer entitled to all of the rights under LEOBR. Is the wording correct?
Actually being removed because the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights doesn't exist anymore.
Correct. Okay, that's what I was wondering. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Sheriff Gamble.
Just for those who've never read proposed legislation, anything that's bracketed won't be in there. So if it's bolded, bracketed, that's correct. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
So LEOBR is not going to be in there at all. It's coming out.
Good to know. Good to know, Sheriff. I didn't see the bracket. My bad.
Yeah, no, that's all right. When I first started reading this stuff 10 years ago, I was like, what is all these brackets?
Just a minute, please. Ms. Hurley has her hand raised again, please. Ms. Hurley?
Yes, what, I think you said this has been attempted, I don't know, 2-3 times in the past. It does seem mostly like a cleanup bill. Like, what has been the problem?
We have any historical perspective there, Mr. Silver?
I can't really talk to whether it was a problem, but in the past, it has been submitted by a senator. This time, it's going to be submitted, it's being submitted by the Department of Public Safety directly.
Does that help, Ms. Hurley?
Okay. I'm just wondering if it's something we're missing, and is there something controversial here that we're missing that I'm just trying to understand why this hasn't moved.
I think honestly, Ms. Hurley, from discussions I've had, is it really just got overcome by events of other bills in the past.
Okay, Ms. Martin, and then Mr. Gibson, please.
Can someone speak to it sounds like it was a change, but to the permanent chair change, the kind of the thinking behind that?
I think Sheriff Gamble there.
No, Sheriff Gamble was against the permanent change.
Yeah, I don't know why it would be in there. So I guess the commission staff would have to speak to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's in there because frankly, it was in the bill the past 3 years and there was no concern identified or addressed to commission staff that it was an issue at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gibson?
Yeah, real quick. So Zanita, I think part of bills just get stuck and lost in the shuffle. I think sometimes they get submitted numerous times for them to make it through. It's not uncommon for bills to be submitted 4 or 5 times before they actually make it out of both houses and then become law. And then just for what it's worth, I agree with Sheriff Gamble that the chair should probably be something the commission has a say in and votes for. Roland, I love you. It's not no diss to you at all.
I'm good.
It's just a matter of I think the commission as a body should be able to vote for its leadership.
Ms. Martin.
Oh, I apologize. I forgot to lower my hand the last time.
I see Ms. Hurley is in agreement. For those of you that aren't tracking the comments, Mr. Moses? You're muted, Mr. Moses.
I think that the history of when this body was created always allowed the state police to chair it because they were actively started this body. And then when it went back, that's where it got written in and stuff like that. But I agree. I think that we should vote on who is our president.
Any further discussion? I'm seeing what looks like some discussion up there in Sykesville. Mr. Silver, anything?
Sir, staff is just waiting for guidance.
Okay. So should we take a vote on this matter so we can push this out? Oh, hold on, Sheriff Gamble.
Well, I was just going to make a motion that we support it with the amendment that we can support with an amendment about the superintendent, and that it should be the commission should vote on the chair. I know it's going to there now. I mean, it's obviously been written and it's sitting up in Annapolis now, but if if our vote's consistent with the Maryland Chiefs and Maryland Sheriff's vote, then maybe we can get that taken out, that amendment taken out and passed as is without that. So can I make that motion? Or are you looking for a motion on this?
Yes, I am. Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Shaka, were you able to record the second?
Yes,
Sound like it was either Carl or Chief Collington.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't think there's any need for any further discussion. Can we go with the verbal vote, please, Shaka?
Mr. Boatright?
I came in at the back end of this conversation, so I don't know who we're voting on. Can I pass?
Yes, sir. Sheriff Gamble?
Aye. Yes.
Ms. Hurley? Yes. Ms. Kojewski? Chief Shinner?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Chief Spalding?
Yes.
Major Loeffler?
Yes.
Chief Collington?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Major Alford?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Dirk Butler?
Yes.
Ms. Radcliffe?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Jeweler?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Colonel Butler?
I'll abstain.
Colonel, the motion did carry though, sir.
Motion carries. Thank you all. All right. We can jump into what was scheduled for the afternoon if we don't need a break. Nods in the affirmative. Okay. Or all right. Looks like Mr. Silver, Mr. Gardner, the commission fund.
Thank you, Colonel. As many of you know, or all of you know, the commission receives a fund every year of $2 million to support training activities and commission activities. Since the inception of the fund, we haven't spent a lot of that money. A lot of that was due to us purchasing, the commission approving us purchasing LMS system to track training and certification requirements throughout the state. As I briefed in October, we have purchased that and we have a good problem. And the problem is that it didn't cost as much as we thought. So last year, when we had to testify on the status of the funds, we were requested to provide a plan on how we were going to fund that money in the future, use those funds. We provided a copy of that plan. Now, let me emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, it's your fund. You vote on how we spend it, when we spend it. This is a living document. What I would plan on doing going forward with the commission's blessing is that we will brief on the status of this fund at every single commission meeting, and make any changes based off of your guidance on what we will spend or make as a priority to spend, I should say. So that we can move forward and try to use these funds for their expected purpose. Along with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would also ask that some consideration be given to establishing an infrastructure in between meetings, such as authorizing the chair of the commission to authorize staff to expend some of the funds. We can set a monetary limit or whatever you'd like for issues that come up in between meetings, so we don't have to have a special meeting every single time we want to expend some of the funds. The reason this came up, ladies and gentlemen, is when we were doing a lot of the administrative charging committee and trial board trainings last year, we did expend some of the funds. You'll see it's adopted in this. And we just want to clarify for transparency purposes, the authorization to spend those funds coming from the chair and subsequently the commission itself. I'm open for any questions of myself and Mr. Gardner.
My question, Mr. Silver, was just what are some examples? I know you gave a couple, but are there any other examples of what the money could be used for, such as this, and this, and definitely not this?
Well, the fund says, Major, that the funds can be used, thank you, to fund activities and training by the commission. That is section 3206.1 of the Public Safety Act.
Mr. Moses and then Mr. Kelly.
Because I didn't see the list when you sent it out of that fund, how much we had and stuff like that. Did it go out?
Colonel, it was in the packet that we sent out. It was the Police Training Fund Strategic Plan and Expectations dated December 2024.
I got 3 attachments and I didn't get some of them.
This would have came out in early December to you, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Go back, see if we can pull her up here. I think it was December 5th.
Thank you, sir.
You can share the document if people would like.
Who did it come from, Wayne? Because
It came from me.
okay.
We can go ahead and pull it up if you would like, sir.
No, I was looking under Miss Cross. That's why.
Let me see if I can. Are you in the process of sending it out up there in Sykesville? So I think I can rip it.
And I can have Ms. Cross send it out again if you'd like.
Okay.
We'll share it on the screen, sir.
That's your call. I'll do best to pull it up on the screen and also send it out.
Sir, we can put it on the screen and we can highlight a few of the areas. If
Okay.
you'd like.
Mhm.
Okay. So what we're showing now is page, well, fiscal year. So this shows the summary of the proposed initiatives and timelines for 2023 to 24 and 24 to 25. And as I stated earlier, ladies and gentlemen, this is a living document. The commission can request adjustments or change priorities as they feel appropriate.
So some of these have been bought already, correct?
No, well, the learning management system year 1, that contract has went out, and that's an ongoing cost because we have to pay for it. That's one of the reasons why we still have the money that we do have in it, is because it wasn't something that we paid for the entire cost in one lump sum. It's spread out over 10 years. That's why there's as much money in there as there is.
But the driving simulators were bought.
That's correct. They were just purchased after this document was developed.
Okay.
And can we speak to that? So the driving training simulator is for who?
The driving training simulator is for the EVOC driving range here at the Public Safety Education and Training Center. And it's used by multiple agencies. And part of the purpose of it is to alleviate the track time that we have, because as you know, the EVOC is scheduled for the most part 4 or 5 years out. So it's just to give us another resource to use in training EVOC.
Okay. So that clears it up. At first, I just thought it was like stuff for the commission, but this can be something is housed, I guess, at the commission, but for a lot of agencies. So not only the driving training simulator, like a shoot, no shoot type of simulator as well. One of those type of things.
Well, this is a driving training, but we also purchase virtual reality simulators as well that we use in commission-related courses at the Public Safety Education Training Center, as well as training the administrative charging committees as well. So we have 2 different types of system. One is a virtual reality. The other one is a driving training simulator.
So the consultant for the drug policy reform and training, has that gone out, that contract?
No, that has not went out. We anticipate having that in April.
Mr. Kelly?
And I think Wayne may have answered my question, but will this proposed initiative serve as also the priority, so to speak, for the funds immediate disbursement, or is there a schedule of disbursement specific for these initiatives?
Basically, yeah, we've laid out what we believe to be the timeline for spending funds based on the year. Now, the commission, this fund is actually managed by Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services for the commission, obviously following DMV's guidelines. But yeah, this is our anticipated proposed initiative for it.
Ms. Martin?
Wayne, is there a mechanism, and I'm driving right now, I can't look at the document for the next 15 minutes or so, but is there a mechanism by which you receive a request for things from departments that would help build out their capacity, or how does your priorities list really kind of come to fruition beyond the commission if there's other stakeholders that give input?
Thank you, ma'am. So we're actually going to hear a request for spending some of these funds in a few minutes. It's on the agenda, and that's how we propose doing it. These are things that have already been discussed in commission meetings previously, or directly support the activities of the commission, and we're requesting to spend them. Now, if someone wants us to expend resources, we would have them come to the commission, make a case for that it fits the requirements of activities and training by the commission, and then you and the commission members would approve or disapprove whether or not we would expend those funds for that.
Are you okay with that, Ms. Martin?
Okay, yes, thank you.
So you still have to go through on some of these purchases, you still got to go through procurement guidelines set up by the state, correct?
Yeah, almost all of them, we still have to go through those guidelines. And as you know, Mr. Mayor, that comes back to whether or not we can buy it directly, or if we have to enter into a contract, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it took 4 years to get the learning system management system.
Any further discussion on the matter? Okay, Mr. Silver had proposed some restrictions right off the bat. Do we want to go back over what we would consider restrictions? I think price point, some things to give the commission the approval to do in a more expedient manner. as opposed to calling the body together. What else?
That's it, Colonel. We just want to have as much transparency as possible with checks and balances. And sometimes we do have to expend these funds if something comes up, like the ACC training, without having to call a full meeting to order.
Okay.
So-
Go ahead, Mr. Moses.
So what would be your cutoff, Wayne, that would make it easy for you with staying with the state guidelines too?
We've sort of talked around the table about it. 5,000 that could be approved by the chair of the commission without bringing a full meeting to order. Now, I will tell you, in most cases, this isn't going to be something that's brand new. This will be something that has either formally been approved by the commission to spend it on, and we just had to spend it piecemeal, or it's something written into the Public Safety Act, such as the ACC training, which we are mandated to do, and it would just be an authorization for us to spend those funds to do the mandated requirements.
Okay. So at this point, are we best having this, the attached document modified and sent out for everybody's review before we move any further on it?
We can do that, sir, if you'd like.
Let's hear from the body. If we could just get a quick verbal yes, no, what we like to do. I don't want to see us chasing our tail here.
Well, I think that we need to do two things. I think we need to send this out, but I think we also, so it doesn't drag on, if they need something, we should allow a $5,000 with you as the president approval up to $5,000. And then we discuss this maybe at the next meeting for the next fiscal year.
Okay, do we have those notes up there in Sykesville? And I'll get Chief Collington right after that. Are you good on that up there?
Yes, sir. I mean, we just wanted to add a few checks and balances, but we certainly can go in more depth and discuss it in April, sir.
Okay, Chief Collington?
Thank you. So, yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off Mr. Moses there. I was just thinking, as if this is a living document, there should be a discretionary fund set aside to take care of those things that may come up, those new initiatives or technology that may come up. And I would just make a motion that that discretionary fund be underneath the chair, who will make that decision on how those funds will be dispersed.
Okay, we have a motion.
I second it. Up to $5,000. I'd just like to give up to $5,000. Anything over 5,000 requires full commission.
Okay, Chief Collington, are you okay with that modification to your motion?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay, any
Second.
further? We have the second. Any further discussion, or can we go to the vote? Hearing nothing, let's go to the verbal vote, please. Ms. Cross?
Yep.
Mr. Boatright,
Yes.
Sheriff Gamble,
Yes.
Ms. Hurley,
Yes.
Chief Shinner,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Chief Spalding,
Yes.
Major Loeffler,
Yes.
Chief Collington,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Major Alford,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Dirk Butler,
Yes.
Ms. Radcliffe,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeweler,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Colonel Butler,
Yes.
The motion carries, sir, and we will, as part of the regular meeting, have a commission fund review going forward at each meeting, because there are also very specific parameters on how and when that money can be spent.
Okay, I see a hand raised from Major Alford.
Hey, Colonel, my question was just the process of people request. How does that? I don't see that in the packet unless I'm over missing it. If someone wants to request it, what's the process?
So the way it's set up is the money, and actually maybe I will just, Kate, you mind if I defer to you?
Sure.
Okay, you'll get it more accurate than I will. Colonel, I'd like to defer to Ms. Gossard, who is the Executive Director of the Public Safety Education and Training Center, who also manages the funds as part of the DPSES process.
Very well, Ms. Dotson.
Good morning. Just want to clarify for the group, as I was concerned, some people may not completely understand the intention of the fund. As you know, this fund was created along with many of the recent bills that were passed and the inability for the commission to support the new requirements. As you know, the commission has no staff or no budget to perform its functions. So the PSETC assists with those processes. However, these large initiatives are specific to statewide requirements and managed through the commission. So this fund cannot be dispersed to separate agencies, although it's our intention to provide the services, technology, processes, all of these large initiatives through this fund. So I think it may be misunderstood that agencies see this perhaps as a grant opportunity or a specific request for their individual agency, which it is not. This fund is for the state and for these commission initiatives that all agencies can and will benefit from. But again, we do have the standard state procurement process for all purchases within the procurement regulations of the state. So any request, while it can be brought up during a commission meeting as a request to spend those funds, it does need to be for the benefit of the entire state.
Well, and thank you for that clarification. And one of the reasons why I ask the question is because, you know, as part of the transition team, hearing from chiefs and sheriffs and folks across the state, and you all know this is no secret to you all that some of these new regulations have been kind of onerous and confusing and all those sorts of things. And so what I was kind of wondering is, number one, if agencies even know, not that they can get any individual opportunities, but as a collective voice, speak up around some of the things that they may need that the commission may be able to help provide for the entire state. And I just wasn't sure if that was a well-known process or something that was just kind of getting going, or if that makes sense.
Excuse me, just want to clarify and add a couple of points to this plan. So first of all, this is an overall strategic plan. So there are 6 goals that we've established along with objectives and also performance measures. So the budget and the initiatives that are in this document are tied to the goals and the objectives in the document. So, for example, in strengthening, the first goal is strengthen the public safety education and training center's position as a statewide leader in public safety training and education. You'll see some of these objectives, and part of that will be tied to reaching out with a work group that we will establish that will look at training issues, trends in public safety, law enforcement that we need to address. And they may be some things that are legislated by the General Assembly, or they may be things that come to the surface that we feel need to be addressed and that the commission can have a role in developing that training. So for example, you have the issues of, this is just off the top of my head here, the specialized units in law enforcement agencies. You know, there's a report that just came out, I think, from the Department of Justice on a review of some of the issues that have happened in law enforcement agencies with specialized units. Well, that could be something that we could tackle here in Maryland if we wish to develop a training program. We could host a panel discussion with experts or whatever and try to look at those issues. We know that's happened. It's happened in Baltimore. It's happened in other agencies, but it could simply happen to any law enforcement agency here in Maryland. So that would just be one issue that could surface that we may want to address as a commission and develop a program around. So really, when you look at this, you have to look at the 6 goals that are established in the initial portion of this plan, along with what we're trying to accomplish to address the issues that we've outlined. So, for example, some of the things that the General Assembly has passed with the Police Accountability Act in 2021, wellness and resiliency, the less lethal, and we've already made steps moving forward with our virtual reality system that can be used for use of force and de-escalation training, and we've made some purchases there. Those are things that we're looking to move forward with, as well as technology upgrades here at the center. So all of this is tied to the goals and objectives that have been outlined in the initial portion of this document, along with initiatives to work our way down to start accomplishing some of these goals and objectives. And as Wayne said, it is a living document, and I think it's something that we should be looking at annually, discuss here at one of the commission meetings when we move forward each calendar year or fiscal year, whatever we decide to do with this. But we will continue to update you from the expenditures and also the accomplishments of performance measures to achieve the goals and objectives that have been outlined.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my question. You answered it from the part that you said that you all will be reaching out to those agencies, and then what Ms. Martin was saying for how do they know to reach back. And I guess that's part of the reason why we have all these different presidents of the different entities on here, that they can push that out from the municipalities, Maryland Chiefs, Sheriffs Association, stuff like that. So that answered it. Thank you.
Okay.
This is just
Mr.
a
Moses?
break for us to get started.
Sounds good. Mr. Moses, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just think that the commission deals so closely with the chief, the commission staff deals so closely with the chief and sheriff's association that this should be an annual presentation to them on the fund and what their goals are and what they're looking to do.
Okay. For the record, Ms. Cross, Ms. Special Agent Kojaleski is on the line for the next votes or any other discussion. Kojo, can you hear us? Okay, she shot me a text saying she's on the line. Just next time around, if there's any individual acknowledgement, make sure we include her, please. All right. Is there anything further on that issue?
No, Colonel. Like I said, we really just want to be very transparent with this, and we will continue to update the commission, and we can certainly take any guidance provided by the commission on how to move forward with this. And we can go into more detail if you'd like at the next meeting. We'll send it back out to the commission members again, and we'll make sure we put it on the agenda for April.
Okay, sounds good to me. We can move on to our next issue. Ocean City seasonal police officers, Mr. Silver.
Yes, Colonel. So as part of that regulation review that we were doing and the confliction, we found a few places where the language in the Public Safety Act is not consistent with the language that is in the our regulations, primarily dealing with the process of provisional officers versus probationary officers versus part-time officers. So in order to get out in front of this, this is more just to let the commission be aware. We met with Ocean City and identified some areas where there were inconsistencies between the standards that may impact their ability to hire seasonal officers. It was very productive. They appreciated us reaching out to them directly about it, and they understand the situation that we're dealing with, and we will continue to work with them moving forward. I just wanted to bring that to the commission's attention in case commission members started hearing, well, what's going on with Ocean City. We are in full contact with Ocean City, and we're going to try to, they're going to work on a General Assembly fix, but also we just didn't want to blindside them as we reviewed the commission regulations. So this is more of an update to the commission members.
Okay. Any questions about that from anyone? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to our next issue. Commission Academy body worn camera request. Mr. Wagner.
Colonel Butler, before we do that, our Assistant Attorney General asked that if we could go back to the plan, the fund plan, and get some acknowledgement in way of a vote from commission members to continue to move forward with this plan. And obviously we can reassess it and readdress it because it's a living document in April. Because we were requested to provide this in December to the General Assembly as part of the large budget amount of money we had in the budget last year that we had to testify to. So if we could just get commission acknowledgement that, you know, we can move forward with the plan, knowing it's a living document, and we will continue to modify based on the commission's wishes.
Okay, do we need to delve down into the restrictions or parameters that were requested by the members of the commission for the motion?
No, I don't believe so. No, we've already been voted on that, sir. We just need a yay or nay on whether the commission supports the fund now, knowing that we can change it in April or modify it or update it as we go forward. We just want some closure on this.
Okay.
DPSC, and actually technically it's DPSCS's document.
Okay, hearing Mr. Silver, is there a motion?
I make a motion. Second.
Okay. Ms. Cross, if you have the second, could you go ahead with the verbal vote, and please remember Special Agent Koldrzewski is on the line.
And Colonel Butler, to clarify, that's a motion for us to move forward, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Boatright,
Yes.
Sheriff Gamble,
Yes.
Ms. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Kojeski, Ms. Kojeski,
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Chief Shinner,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Chief Spalding,
Yes.
Major Loeffler,
Yes.
Chief Collington,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Major Alford,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Dirk Butler,
Yes.
Ms. Radcliffe,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeweler,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Colonel Butler,
Yes.
The
Any
motion
opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, Mr. Silver, sounds like it's unanimous.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me out there?
We can now.
Okay, I've been on the whole time. I'm hoping you guys heard me during roll call and everything as well. I'm not quite sure what is going on.
Okay.
Colonel, would you like to go into the body worn camera request?
Yes, but for Kojo there, if you feel you aren't heard, just continue to shoot me a text. And,
Okay, yeah, and for the record, everybody, I have voted yes to all motions.
Okay.
Thank you, Agent.
Mission Academy body worn camera request, Mr. Wagner.
Colonel Butler, unfortunately, Mr. Wagner couldn't be here with us today, so he provided the information to me. And this kind of goes right along what Ms. Martin was just talking about how we will request funds from these commission funds to be expended. As many of you know, if not all of you, the commission, under the direction of the Public Safety Education and Training Center, we run a police academy, an entry-level program, primarily for small and medium-sized agencies across the state that do not have their own academy. In our latest academy, we had 12 separate agencies in there, and they were trained by PCTC staff. PCTC staff and the police entry-level program is proposing that the commission authorize us to purchase body-worn cameras for the recruits in an effort to acclimate the recruit in a controlled environment to start memory building process, education, and training. In other words, to get them used to using body-worn cameras. Now, the body-worn cameras that we're looking at, they're training body-worn cameras. And since we have so many different agencies in our academy, we can't just use one current model because they all use different models. So what this is just to allow them to build motor memory. And what is also unique about it, ladies and gentlemen, is unlike actual body cameras used by agencies that usually will upload their information to a cloud service, these body-worn cameras are specially made to use an SD card. So there is no uploading to the cloud. There's no ongoing purchases of technology to maintain that. It will load into an SD card that is in the body-worn camera. And what it will also allow the student to do is to go back and self-critique or to critique with an instructor after they go through situational-based learning. And then we can pull it on the smart board, and it's just going to enhance the training environment for the students. The police entry-level training program is requesting that we allow the purchase of 32 of these body-worn cameras, and we anticipate the total cost to be approximately $6,000. And like I said, there will be no ongoing cost for storing the data. The data will just be used in the training area. Once the academy is completed, the SD cards can be erased and reused for the next academy.
Okay. You broke up on the cost. What was the cost?
$6,000. That's the anticipated cost, sir.
For 32 cameras, and how many different agencies do you happen to train for if you had to bracket it, give or take 3?
Well, in our last academy, we had 12 different agencies. We also trained a lot of state certified police officers from different agencies within the state. So it can change from academy to academy. But historically, we usually have about 10 to 12 different agencies in our academy.
Okay, knowing that it could change, I'm wondering if this is something that's better bore by the department as part of their body camera purchases, that throw in X number of training cameras. But we can come back to that. Ms. Martin, I think you were the first with the hand up.
Thank you, sir. So you mentioned, well, first of all, I love this. So now they don't have an excuse not to turn their camera on out the academy. But number 2, though, you mentioned the different body cameras. So are you thinking about procuring like different brands out of the 32? And if you're planning on doing that, how are you going about that?
No, ma'am. We're going to purchase one basic camera, because as far as to work the motor memories, as far as how you turn them on and turn them off, they all pretty much work the same way. However, if we had everyone bring their own body-worn cameras, well, some of how their storage requirements are, where they can download the data, someone would have to go back to their departments to do it. This would just streamline that entire process. It would also allow us to give body-worn cameras to those agencies that don't currently have them. So it would just streamline the process and also allow us to control the data that's used for training purposes for evaluation and review with the student.
I got you. Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Moses, then Mr. Boatwright.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. The only concern I have is we know how academy recruits could be. Will you have a policy developed on the use of that? Because I could tell you that they could get in the back room and do something that might be on camera. As long as you're going to have a policy that's clearly identifies, when they can use it, when they can't, I have no problem with it. The only other concern I have is, just like with a weapon, is if you're using a different camera, is some attorney gonna raise an issue that they weren't trained on that particular camera? But that's a legal issue. I know my attorney won't let me do it unless I get everybody's the exact camera that they're using on.
Go ahead. Mr. Moses, so the actual use of the training on their issued body-worn camera will come from the department as part of the either follow-up training or during FTO training. And these, one thing I'd like to clarify as well is that they're not keeping these. As soon as they get done the academy, it's like any other piece of equipment we issue, we would pull them all back and we will reuse them for each academy, as well as the SD cards.
Mr. Boatwright?
Yeah, I'm wanting to follow up with part of the comment that Mr. Moses made. I was just worried about the actual device itself. The fact that, like has already been mentioned, most agencies, all agencies don't use the same body camera, so I worry about the training. But I do like the comment that was made earlier by Colonel Butler that, this could be something that the agencies that are sending people to these to the academy could actually, the cost could be shifted to them, such as, purchasing the red guns and other training materials that the officers use. That's something that the agencies should be able to provide when they're sending a new recruit to the academy, as opposed to the commission paying for it.
And to piggyback on Mr. Boatwright, I think we're teaching a fine motor skill with the activation of that camera, which goes back to what Ms. Martin was saying. We don't do that with firearms. And as far as the camera package goes, I think that cost should be borne by the department. And when you think about it, the department should have other uses for this, be it in service or whatever type of remedial training that pops up with the review of those body-worn camera videos. I think it's probably a little safer for us to shift that back to them and maybe order a smaller pool if you need any at all. Major Loeffler.
So when we get outside agencies that attend our academy, we do issue them BPD body-worn cameras. We use them similarly as Wayne's describing. They use them in scenario-based training. They are allowed to review their BWC and the actions they take. Our cameras actually integrate with our records management system, so then they write an incident report and they're able to see that connection as well. I do worry, and I guess I support the request in the sense of having them have a common camera. I don't know how they would have the capability to integrate those different body-worn cameras types into their system for review. Granted, there's only a handful of cameras out there, but if they have all of those cameras brought to them, that assessment and review process would be very challenging without everyone being on the same common platform.
So Major Loeffler brings up a valid point. I think I'm going off the assumption that every camera manufacturer does have a training camera or something that can go into a training mode with an SD card. Is that something we want to maybe look into before we make this decision for this expenditure? And
Colonel, we could certainly go back to the Pell Academy staff and look at the possible options of doing that.
Okay, Chief Spaulding.
Yes, thank you. Being the chief of a small agency and also one who has sent several recruits through this training academy, I think this is an excellent idea. I don't think the difference in the manufacturer of the camera is going to make that much of a difference. Again, we're just training muscle memory at this point, and I think it would be very beneficial, especially to the smaller agencies that uses this academy. Thank you.
Any additional questions or concerns? Okay, can we get a motion for the vote? Hold on, Mr. Kelly.
Just a quick question, piggybacking off of what Mr. Moses and Clyde said. Will there have to be a software / hardware purchase for PTSC to kind of operate and download footage or whatever the case may be for these specific cameras that are going to be for the training academies?
Mr. Kelly, these cameras, because they work off of an SD card, they would not. We already have an infrastructure in other types of video footage we do in the academy using other technologies. We could just store it the same way. And then, as I said, once the academy is over, the SD cards would be erased and they would be prepared for the next academy class.
Thank you.
Would the warranties and all the maintenance that's for the cameras, would that be coming out this commission fund, or would that have to be come out from a different fund? The yearly, I guess, whatever, or anything that may come up besides your original purchase?
Well, because these don't load up to the data to a cloud, much of the maintenance fee is, there is none. You know, however, obviously, just like the laptops we issue or any other type of technology, if it breaks, then we have to repair it or we have to replace it. So that would be separate from this. But we don't anticipate any long-term costs associated with it like you would have if you use the cloud-based system.
All right, if we don't have any further questions, can we get a motion on this, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion.
Chief Spalding, your motion is?
I'd like to make a motion that the commission approve the purchase of the body-worn cameras, the training body-worn cameras for use during their police entry-level training.
Was there a number? 32, I think.
32, it's 6,000 a year is what I believe was stated.
6,000 total, sir, not annually.
Thank you.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Moses has a question.
I'd like to see a policy that's written on them once they're purchased, because it's our funds, that it's the commission funds, and I think that we should have a right to have a policy.
Colonel, pardon me, Mr. Moses, the policy will mirror the commission's model body-worn camera policy.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
Okay, does that require an adjustment to the motion, or are we good with the motion as it's stated? Okay, did we have a second? Who was the second?
Major
For all I
Loeffler.
was, Major Loeffler.
Okay, Major Loeffler, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, could we move for the vote, please? A verbal vote, Shaka?
Mr. Boatright,
Yes.
Sheriff Gamble,
Yes.
Ms. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Kojewski,
Yes.
Chief Shinner,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Chief Spalding,
Yes.
Major Loeffler,
Yes.
Chief Collington,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Major Alford,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Dirk Butler,
Yes.
Ms. Ratcliffe,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeweler,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Colonel Butler,
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously, sir.
Thank you. So moved. All right, next up, we have a curriculum project, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Colonel. A year and a half ago, commission members voted to approve a partnership between, using commission funds, a partnership between the Training Directors Association and the commission to develop a curriculum project. And this curriculum project was seen as an offshoot of the training objectives. As many of you here may remember, originally the commission had approved that we do a curriculum process instead of objectives, but that became, it wasn't timely. So we finished the objectives with the thought that we would move forward with the curriculum project. At that time, we were looking at expending commission funds to enter into a contract to have an entity develop the curriculum in coordination with commission staff and the Training Directors Association, similar to what we had done with the job task analysis. Well, what we're proposing now is to streamline the process, that the commission approve commission staff to explore entering into that curriculum project, not with a private entity, but instead University of Maryland Global Campus, who has expertise in doing this. It is a state system. It can streamline the process. And all I'm looking for, ladies and gentlemen, is approval for us to explore the process. We would have obviously come back in April with more details on it, but I really didn't want to enter into any type of discussions, detailed discussions with them on it until I received commission approval.
Okay, so it sounds like we're just looking for a motion to explore process, correct?
Colonel, yes, that is correct, sir.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Okay, I think Sheriff Campbell, will you the second? Mr. Moses talking.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, any need for discussion on the matter, or can we move to a vote? Hearing none, let's move to the vote, Ms. Cross.
So we believe we can do a voice vote on this.
Yes. Voice vote, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion carries.
Thank you, Colonel. The next agenda item, Colonel, is a commission tablet project. One of the things the commission has looked at, and you're all familiar with, is we have the blue binders when we meet in person. What we would like to explore is adding technology to the meetings and doing away with the commission binders and instead establishing a tablet process, whereas all those documents that we place in your binders, we could make available to you on a tablet. Now, the tablets would be here at the commission, they would be stored at the commission, they would be charged at the commission. The only real change would be when you come for a commission meeting, we would just tell you which button to hit and the document would come up for you. We've explored the cost of this. We're not looking to purchase enough for the commission itself. We would just like permission to explore the project, buy a few tablets, give them to some commission members to use, get some feedback on the feasibility of doing this system, and whether or not the commission would like us to go forward with using technology instead of the binders.
Okay, sounds like we're just looking to discuss a T&E of this particular product. Chief Collington?
Yes, just a question. Are there any grant funding opportunities to purchase these tablets?
We haven't identified any, Chief, and right now we're looking at such a small number of them, really just 2 or 3, so we can kind of see how they work.
Okay, because I mean, you would definitely also need the software to go with them, right?
Actually, the system we're looking at, sir, is web-based, so there wouldn't really be a normal tablet with the information in a controlled environment downloaded to the tablet.
Okay.
Mr. Moses?
I think that putting those, I think it's a great idea because the commission staff has to put all that stuff in those binders, which takes a lot of man hours to be able to do, that we're wasting it. We have the money in the fund to be able to purchase these. And I think that a pilot program would be absolutely great just to see.
Ms. Radcliffe?
just out of curiosity, how much would one tablet be that you're looking at, Wayne?
Radcliffe, we just really did preliminary on this, because we're just really trying to be transparent. It was a couple $100 for a tablet.
Oh,
We're not-
wow.
We're not looking at state-of-the-art tablets.
Thank you.
We're trying to get the information from point A to point B.
Major
you.
Alford?
I definitely agree with where we're going with this. And then when he said everything's gonna be downloaded, I was good. And then when he said web-based, I kind of stopped for a second just because of that room we're always in. The technology and the trying to get service is always an issue. So any issues do we see with needing to get any type of service to get whatever documents? Because that room, unfortunately, my phones don't work as well. So I just want to make sure there's no issue there with the technology.
So Major, you're right. That's why we just want to do a test to see what it would look like. But also in the fund, that's one of the things we look at exploring is improving the infrastructure.
Okay.
Commission staff.
So just to clarify with the T&E purpose, we don't need to clarify boosters or anything like that. We're going to get a couple tablets to kick the tires on it and see what we need to make that actually come to fruition and then examine the price point, correct?
That is correct, Colonel.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd move for a verbal vote on this one.
Do we need a motion, sir?
Motion, please.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Second. Okay. No discussion, sir?
No discussion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Sounds like it's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you, sir. Colonel, would you like us to go on to the next agenda item, sir?
Please.
Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, as you're aware, and as we kind of discussed earlier, we approved the entry level objectives in the October meeting. And as an offshoot of that, once we approved the entry level objectives, commission staff in coordination with the training directors, we reviewed the comparative compliance objectives. Comparative compliance objectives are used for individuals who they do not have to go to a full academy, either because they have been a certified police officer in Maryland, but they've been out of the business, or they've come from out of state or the federal government. So what we did with the comparative compliance objectives is we basically updated the old objectives using the new objectives language, and we are requesting commission members approve those new comparative compliance training objectives for use. And along with that, we would also have to identify the time frame for having them implemented. One other note, ladies and gentlemen, we did add some of the language that we added for that into the new entry level objectives, such as dealing with active shooter and de-escalation, were also included in these comparative compliance objectives. I stand by for any comments.
Mr. Moses?
Was this brought up to the directors academy? I mean, the academy directors brought to them for approval?
Yes, it was sent out by Lieutenant Chatfield to all the members with a suspense date of 4 weeks. Comment, we received no comments.
Okay. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Who was the second?
We don't have one yet.
I'll second it, Gamble.
Thank you, Sheriff. For this one, I think we should probably go individual vote.
Yep.
Ms. Cross?
Yes, sir. Would you like comment, sir?
No. Any further discussion, or can we move to the vote?
Hey, Colonel, can you repeat the motion, please?
The motion is to approve the comparative compliance objectives, but we do need a date that they will be implemented, similar to the discussion we just had with the entry level objectives.
Okay, can we go back to some discussion and see if we can arrive on a date and get it all right the first time, please?
I think since they're compare compliance objectives, we should stay with the same date that we did for the regular objectives.
Okay, hearing Mr. Moses, any further discussion on that? Are we in agreement? We should stay with the same date and modify the motion? Okay, could we repeat the motion with Mr. Moses's addition to stick with the same date, which was December 1st, 2024?
Yes, sir. The motion is to adopt the new comparative compliance training objectives with the same implementation date as December 1st of the entry-level training objectives.
We have a second?
I believe it
Sheriff
was-
Gamble was the second. You still agree? Okay. No further discussion. I'd like to move for the vote, please, Mr. Cross.
Mr. Boatright,
Yes.
Sheriff Gamble,
Yes.
Ms. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Wojcicki,
Yes.
Chief Moore, Chief Shinner,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Chief Spalding,
Yes.
Major Loeffler,
Yes.
Chief Collington,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Major Alford,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Dirk Butler,
Yes.
Ms. Ratcliffe,
Yes.
Ms. Martin, Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeweler,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Colonel Butler,
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Thank you. Next up, we have security guard objectives. Mr. Silver.
Thank you, Colonel. Section 19402, which was amended last year in Senate Bill 760, directed the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission to develop training standards for security guards in the state of Maryland. Now, this is very similar to the special police requirements that we have, where we are not the certification body for security officers, but we are instead developing the certification requirements for them in the way of objectives. Maryland State Police will continue to issue the licenses, and based off of, with the training requirement that they have met the commission requirements. And we anticipate, as far as the implementation, we will follow the same process that we did for the security police objectives 2 or 3 years ago. There are 16 objectives. They are based off the requirements in the law, issued to a few security guard requirements related to having to know what they have to do to maintain and to receive the certification, and what limitations there are on their security guards certifications or licensing. So I request a review and approval of the security guard training objectives, and I stand by to answer any questions.
Ms. Hurley.
Yes, thank you. So MSP has to actually develop the training that complies with these standards?
No, ma'am. The security guard companies will through the commission, will request a certification number, and they will follow the same protocols that we have for other courses that we have. And then we will approve those requirements, and then we will keep a list of what companies are certified to teach the class, provide it to MSP, and then MSP will validate that they have in fact completed the training before they receive their license.
Okay, and when is this requirement supposed to go into effect under the statute?
It will go into effect June 1st of this year.
Okay, so we need to get these approved so that there is, I guess, some notice to certifying agencies so that they could develop the training and then submit it to the commission for approval. The commission will review it to ensure it complies with the guidance that we're considering right now. Is that how?
Yes, ma'am. And that is very similar to, well, we're going to follow the same process that we already followed with with special police. We've already have the infrastructure ready to be pushed out. We just need the objectives approved so we can move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Browning?
Just to provide some clarity to you, ma'am, what we do is we authorize the programs. We do not certify the programs because certification is special to their licensure, and so we don't use that term. So for special police, we approve authorized training providers and authorized training courses, and that are then implemented by the companies for special police commissioned agencies. And we will follow that same family of rules for the security guard training, so that we authorize the course, not to certify, so as to not confuse that we are certifying the security guards themselves, ma'am.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Moses?
And the security guards have agencies, but now the law also makes, like here at Warwick, we have security. So our people have to be also comply with the state police and then do the training also.
Major Alfred?
Mr. Moses, that's correct.
I just had one question. I was looking at some of the, well, actually not some of all of the objectives, and I obviously they started putting in the de-escalation and what you do with use of force. But in regards to duty to act or aid, I don't see that as one of the objectives there. Obviously, their level won't be as much as a police officer is, but any thought of the duty to aid someone to a certain degree that needs assistance? When I'm talking about health issues, injuries, stuff to that. Is that
Major, what we did when we developed these is this 760 was very clear on what had to be included in their training, and their training program is a 12-hour block. So these are the minimum standards that would be required for a security officer to receive their license from the Maryland State Police. So we didn't get into additional topics, nor a use of force report, because that's a Maryland State Police function, not a commission function.
Okay.
My apologies.
But-
I just figured I'd answer the question on the screen.
If I could just follow up on that, I mean, y'all might know better than me, but a duty to render aid seems kind of basic.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going with, because it talks about the use of force. I'm not talking about using use of force, but everything here is almost kind of mimicking what we had to go through, and it just seems like that one little piece, especially for a security guard, it just seems like that should be addressed on. Now, what they do, it could be called 911. That could be I rendered aid somehow, but just I don't know how we missed that one. It's just weird.
Major, it wasn't included in the bill, so we were meeting the requirements of the bill. And you're right, depending on the position and the role and the function and the law, security officers, their duty to respond could be very different depending on their role and their circumstance.
Mr. Boatwright?
Yeah, not speaking on behalf of the Maryland State FOP, but a little bit of a personal experience. I was a owner of a licensed security company for a number of years, and the expectation that a security officer will have the level of understanding and training. Security officers' responsibility is to observe and report, and not necessarily to get involved. So it becomes a liability issue for the company, the agency themselves, and the actual person to involve themselves in certain situations. Now, I'm looking at the genesis of this law passage, and it goes back to a number of licensed security guards shooting people at supermarkets and or nightclubs and places like that. And when you look into the training of the person, they had no de-escalation training, no other training outside of just going to the gun range and qualifying with the firearm. But there was no necessary regulation on what they should know or what they should do in these types of situations. So I think at the basic level of this 12-hour course of teaching them how to de-escalate, how to separate themselves from a situation rather than just using force will help the security guard agency, because again, we're talking most security guard contracts are paying less than minimum wage. And if you got an armed security officer, you might be paying a little bit over minimum wage, but the expectation for them to intervene in certain critical incidents, I would rather them be as a police officer responding to the scene. I would rather not have another victim at the scene. I want them to get us the information and get the hell out of the way.
And Clyde, I agree with you. I'm not saying that they're supposed to do exactly what you expect an officer to do, but I'm saying expected to do something. And that could be what you just said, get out the way and report. I'm just saying that's not a objective here to report a medical situation. That's why I wanted to be really specific, because it was really specific for us. Your duty to help someone, and we're not saying you got to help them like a police officer. This is what you expect to help them as a security guard, and it could be report. I'm just saying it's not a objective.
So that will be my question. And in this block of training, this 12-hour block, are we doing LEMAC, first aid, CPR? Is that a requirement of them to do something along that line, to know how to apply a tourniquet, to know how to use an AED? Is that a requirement that we're putting in this block?
Ms. Burwright, no, because this requirement is for a minimum security officer. The requirement is 12 hours of training. So we went directly with what the law said, the Senate bill said, that we had to have, they had to be trained on to come up with these objectives.
Understood.
But am I hearing you right, Mr. Silver, when you say, I know we're doing the minimum, I get it. We cannot go a little bit above the minimum? I keep on hearing minimum.
The commission, how would I put this? We were, like we did with the special police requirements, we were pretty much sticking to meet the requirements of the law. The commission can request or modifications, but we have to do that with, I would recommend that we do that with the understanding that the job of a security officer is so unique and different from place to place to place. We may want to be careful not to add a requirement that would only certain security officers would do as opposed to others.
Okay. Mr. Moses?
Just like with the regular police objectives, an agency could elect to do more. I mean, we're going to do more here. And so I think that's critical to remember. That falls back on the agency to be able to hire their people. We train people to be good witnesses. We're not training people to do certain things, but our security officers all go through first aid training. They all go through AED training. So, and we didn't even have a law. So I think that we leave it up to the individual security company to be able to dictate that.
Mr. Kelly?
Does the state have different levels of training requirement for different levels of security officer? Meaning, does the qualifications stay the same for the security officer that sits in a booth at a parking lot as opposed to an armed security officer at an event? Does the state or PTSC have those different levels of incremental training?
Mr. Kelly, there are differences for licensing armed security officers and so forth, but that would fall into the purview of the Maryland State Police. These would just be the minimal standards that they would need when they go to MSP. Now, you will notice we do have an objective where we do identify that if they do carry any other type of weapon, they do have to know the limitations and when and where they can do it. So we did address it, but the commission is not the deciding factor on what those requirements are.
But I guess it would be safe to say these standards right here are the minimum for an unarmed security guard compared to an armed security guard, which would be the weapon, would be the other objectives.
Yeah, because you have selection standards to meet also for armed security.
Mr. Boatwright, and then we have Mr. Johnson. Mr. Boatwright?
Yeah, so now I'm thinking as a member of this commission, I'm concerned about what would be our level of responsibility when crafting this this curriculum or approving a curriculum that a security company requests. Because if the Senate bill that passed requires us to put these standards in place, is it something that we are looking at to just creating I guess a curriculum that everyone will follow, or we're just the approving entity, and what will be our liability and if we approve something that goes awry down the line?
So Kelly, do you want to take that one?
Well, I'll leave it to the two lawyers in the room to give the legal opinion about what our liability would be. But what I would tell you is that when a program comes to my unit, what we do with every course, regardless of its police, SPO, or future security guard programs, we take a look at the submission to ensure that they're meeting the required objectives for the course, to indicate where it is taught and tested in their lesson plan, and that they're meeting a one of the listed requirements. Now, also there is a requirement for in-service topic trainings, and there is not specific objectives for the in-service topics, but for that initial course. So when we look at an authorization for a course that is an in-service course, it must be one of those objectives. So SPO programs are sent to my unit, often with the tests included, but they do send me the lesson plans where they break down where each of the objectives is taught and tested for their program before we provide an authorization code only for SPOs, because this was basically a favor to the state police that we did this functionality. It was not a requirement of the statute. We assisted them in cooperation with them because of the specialization of my unit. So we did that for them. So it made perfect sense when we got the security guard requirements coming to the commission that we would mirror that similar process, since we already had it in play. So we review each program with a close eye to ensure that they're listing out that they are teaching these required objectives. Now, again, if they want to teach much more, that's fine. But if it comes to any kind of impact weapons or firearms or any kind of electronic control device, we do not authorize those kinds of programs, because those are specialty things that they would get authorization for instruction through state police and be licensed instructors through them for those topic areas. We're only going to do these, so to say, academic course topics. So we don't do any ECD courses or firearms courses for SPOs currently, because some SPOs are also armed as well, sir. Now, in terms of the liability, certainly who approved the course, that's going to be the first question. And then the next question is who trained it, or it might come in the reverse order, because just like when a police officer is trained and they do something awry, they want to know who trained them, who approved the program, and all those things come out. But our expertise of security guards is just following the list of objectives to ensure that the company that is requesting that code and that course has listed out how they're going to teach and test it. If it's a concern of the commission, I certainly am willing to hear that feedback, because I do often feel that way, which is why we elected not to do the firearms piece, because if someone does get engaged in a use of force situation, our team is not trained to evaluate those courses in that manner. Does that provide?
It is required. They're basically attesting to us that they're going to teach the objectives as required.
Okay, Mr. Johnson.
So just two things, just to introduce myself. I'm Luther Johnson. I'm the Director of Security at Kennedy Krieger Institute. And I know a few of you here. I was the Deputy Chief of Police in Howard County before I retired in 2020. So I just wanted to address two things. One would concern me on a duty to act, because I do have a security staff here at Kennedy Krieger. And I would be really concerned with a duty to act being in an objective requirement because they get the basic training. I mean, we as police officers had, you know, a background and extensive experience in training. They don't get that. This is a, like Mr. Boatwright said, you know, these folks are making close to minimum wage. I would really be nervous to put an objective in your training program for any duty to act. That would really concern me. And the second question I had was for the commission. What would be the time frame for this process to start? I know June is when it goes into effect, but you know, we have to come up with a training program and do all these things. I just want to know when you plan on approving our trainers that I would put in for training, and when we have to be compliant before that June date.
I can speak to that if you'd like, sir. If that's all right, Colonel. Shall I go ahead?
It is.
So I approached Mr. Silver early on, being aware that this was in play, and went to him with a plan of action, knowing the large heavy lift that it will be for my unit to accommodate the some 1,257 security guard companies in the state of Maryland and their 30,000 security guards that require this training before their renewal. So I created a plan so that we could address that immediately upon you all approving this today, so that we could in fact implement it tomorrow if we needed to. It's already set in motion. We just have to upload the documents to MDLE. All the applications have been created. All the criterion have been created. All the rules of engagement, so to say, have been created. Again, mirroring back to those that are required for the special police officer training courses and instructors.
Okay, thank you, Kelly, for that answer.
Mr. Moses?
I make a motion to approve the objectives the way they are proposed.
Can we pause that for just a minute? Ms. Hurley has a concern.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've been looking at the bill language and I don't see anything that would limit the authority of the commission to add additional training objectives that aren't specifically in the enumerated list if it wanted to consider doing so. And, you know, I think a point of clarification, it looks like we have to provide training objectives for both initial and continuing. Should I assume that this would be for both initial and continuing? So maybe that clarification should be made in the document, unless I missed it.
Yes, Ms. Shirley, they would be the objectives that would be used for the continuing as well. The only thing that would change is the 12 versus the 8, the depth that the agency would, or the organization would go in, because they've already taught it once.
Okay, I feel, I don't know what, if, you know, the trainers will be looking at the statute, but it seems like that should be made clear somewhere around where this document is provided, that clarification. But not to unnecessarily prolong this, but I know this is a serious issue that, as others have said, that these objectives and the training requirement is attempting to address. And so I think the commission could either add to the minimum requirements for the training, or it could separate, you know, minimum requirements and then, you know, strongly encourage. Because when I think of, even if it's not a duty to render aid, but the thought that you could be a security guard and have a gun, and so you'd sort of be authorized to use force, but never been trained in how to render aid, it sounds like maybe that's likely to happen out there, but I don't know if MSP requires that as part of the, you know, the handgun licensing piece that they do. So to me, it's reasonable for the commission to at least explore whether some training on how to render aid, separate and apart from a duty to render aid, particularly if a security guard is going to have a weapon and be authorized to use a weapon.
So Ms. Hurley's question, MSP does not.
So then I support those other commissioners who have at least expressed a desire to have the training objectives address aid. And, you know, I agree that maybe there's some concerns with requiring a duty to render aid where the law does not, but at least requiring training on how to render aid.
Ms. Hurley, we could add an objective to that. I would also, for the good of the commission, would advise that, like any objectives we have, we can modify and update these as needed. So if you would like us to do a deeper dive into that, we certainly can. As I said, we pretty much developed these. This is not based off of the specific requirements in the bill. So we could do a few things. We could just come up with some language and add a 17th objective, or we could approve these and go into a deeper dive about adding objectives like we do with any of our courses at the April meeting.
Yes, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Something that we're making the attempt to do something for that. Because I'm just looking at two objectives specifically now, and I know definitely with Deputy Chief Johnson spoke about minimum wage, personnel, stuff like that. But here it talks about in one of the objectives when they can use authorized use of force, right? When they can use it, when they cannot. And then there's another one talking about the legal limits of when they can detain somebody. So we're talking about detaining someone using force, but we don't want to touch what as far as rendering aid or what that level looks like. I'm like, we're hitting both of them. We might as well finish it off.
Mr. Boatright?
Yeah, not to belabor the conversation, but just so we all have an understanding that this is the way it's been forever. And I know that we should want to make sure that we're hiring the best and putting the best people out there. And I totally agree with Miss Hurley's assessment. Well, when she said that you have people out here with a firearm that are not trained on how to render aid after, and if there's a possibility they could use that firearm. But the sad part about it is, with security companies, you're talking about a limited budget. You're talking about trying to get your clients to pay you for a service, and you're bidding against other companies. I think the numbers are out there of 1,200 security companies. So you're all vying to get the contract. And then when you hire a person, this training, which you're paying your trainer and to provide this training for your particular employee that you're now hiring on, you're bringing on a new person for this particular contract, because it's not like we have staff sitting around waiting for work. And I'm not in the business of speaking for the security guard agency, but now once they get the contract, they have to hire the person, and then they have to train this person and make sure that this person has this required training given by them for liability purposes. And all the while, they're still trying to provide that service for their client. So I don't know if it's in our best interest to put so many regulations on that industry, because it's not bearing a lot of fruit for them, as far as, and that's when you start looking at these cases where people did not de-escalate. A lot of times you have these unlicensed security guard companies that are taking these contracts and they're getting involved in these situations. And then the person is left to, the person that commits these acts is left to deal with the criminal process on their own, because they didn't work for a company that follows the rules. So I just wanted to throw all of that out there as context. I know we're trying to, do the right thing here, but I want everybody to have a clear picture.
Thank you. Ms. Hurley?
Yes, I'm looking at the law, and I'm wondering when it says that if the commission's unable to identify a program, and I guess that means and authorize a program, that the commission shall establish an initial or continuing training program that meets the requirements. Does that mean that if it's too burdensome for the private sector to take this up, that the state would bear the cost of creating the training program?
So what we did, Ms. Hurley, was, we saw that language, and we reached out to private security companies, to some community colleges and some private schools who provided us with their current curriculum. So we were able to identify that there are multiple entities out there that could train this program. So at this time, it is not expected that the commission will have to develop the program ourselves.
Well, that's encouraging then. So I mean, I don't know if I'm going so far as to make a motion, but I think that that there is enough of a positive response to this question of at least including a training on how to render aid, and then to ask the staff to, do a deeper dive to provide us with either some continued updates or some other areas we should explore to see if we need to flesh out any of these objectives beyond what we discussed today. Because in light of the urgency of trying to get something out, I think if we approve the existing objectives and then just add that they're trained on how to render aid, because MSP has already said you can get a gun as a licensed security officer and not get that training from them. So if we just add that how to render aid, I mean, a lot of entities do CPR training and how to render. That doesn't seem like an onerous addition, while we continue to allow other commissioners to do some additional thinking and be able to bring back additional, recommendations at a later date.
So Ms. Hurley, if I'm understanding you correctly, and I know you haven't exactly made a official motion, but we can approve these, but then the commission staff will do a deeper dive into adding additional objectives related to either how or when to render aid. And we can add that as an additional objective based on the commission's recommendation at the April meeting.
Yes, like I mean, it's my recommendation that just they be trained on how to render aid now, that we add the objective that they be trained on how to render aid now, and that what we push forward for later discussion is this question of a duty or obligation to render, whether there are any other areas that commissioners feel that we should add on to the minimum requirements in the statute. But for now, I can see how the objectives track the statute. The only other concern that's been raised today is this question of rendering aid. And I would propose that we address that in the immediate time frame by adding just the training objective has to include how to render aid, not that they have a duty to render aid, but just I'm talking CPR. How do you, if you shoot someone and they're bleeding out, I mean, do you know how to try to save their life while, the ambulance before the EMTs arrive?
You're really only supposed to render aid within the scope of how you were trained to begin with.
And if there's no training, there's no assistance. So I just think, why can't we? If the state is going to authorize someone to have a weapon and use that weapon, why can't they? I mean, we do it for officers. Why can't we do it for security guards? Just how to. And if they can, if they can at least have that knowledge, that better protects our constituents.
Okay, if we could get the response from Sykesville and then Mr. Johnson up at Kennedy Krieger.
Yes, I think from a legal perspective, we're treading on thin ice in terms of legislating. If the General Assembly has looked at this, they know how to craft a bill that says you have a duty to render aid. They've done it. And they specifically did not do it here. And they've instructed the commission in very definitive terms what we're supposed to set objectives up on and what we're not supposed to. And from Mr. Johnson's and Mr. Boatwright's perspective, you're opening up a whole liability can of worms, in my opinion, by including this in the training. So I don't think it's a good idea.
Is that our AAG? I'm sorry, I can't see it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Earl. Let's, Mr.
Let my
Major-
colleague disagree with me. Well, look, I mean, I've already said I don't believe that the law prohibits this body from expanding upon the training requirements, but I'm not going to ask the commission to take a vote on something where you have two AAGs in disagreement. And so I hear the commissioners who have a concern. I share that concern. And I commit to elevating this internally within our office so we can get you advice on the authority of the commission to go beyond that short list that's in the statute.
But the point about the legislators, and I can't remember, I don't want to quote you, but when you said they gave us clear guidance on what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. I don't know if that's in this case, because that means we'll all be robots, and that's not why we're on this commission. We're on this commission to bring different things to the table. So if I was told before I took that oath in front of them senators back in October, whenever I had to send in whatever, 24 of them, I don't remember them saying, yeah, whatever we say, you have to agree with everything that that I don't remember that part. So I don't want to say that all the objectives, what we can and we can't do. That's why we have this commission. So I'll be careful on that type of comment.
Mr. Johnson?
Okay, so I actually, in theory, agree with training our folks to render aid, in theory. My problem is there's no oversight for that training. Like, for instance, when we was police officer, we had LEMAC, we had other oversights for that training. If you put that out here to security agencies, and as many security agencies as there are, and different types of levels of training, there's no oversight to what that rendering aid is. So that is concerning me from a liability standard. I don't have any armed security guards. We have a hands-off policy here at Kennedy Krieger. So I looked at the objectives for a basic security officer who is just to detect and report, and it seemed reasonable. Anytime you add a duty to act, my liability radar goes off and it concerns me. Or anytime we have to train to a level to render aid, I don't know. If I was on your side, and I would worry about what their training is in rendering aid. They can make a situation worse. So I'm just throwing that out there. Just there's so many concerns from my previous experience in law enforcement versus security. It's an entirely different training regime, training environment. So,
Thank you, Mr. Amate up top. Steve, you're muted if you're talking. Okay, Mr. Moses.
I think when we talk about first aid, we need to look at the Good Samaritan, because just like Mr. Johnson said, there's a level of training that you're allowed to do for the training. Our programs, police-wise, is approved through the MIMS, which gave us approval to create that program, and it's a 3-day program. But if I teach somebody CPR and they get shot, and I don't teach them how to put a tourniquet on, am I going to be liable? So I think that I agree most of the time with Ms. Hurley, but I'm just worried about what what liability we have here to force these security agencies to do, and what fallback do they have on the level of training? Because once we put that objective in, then we hold it, because they're going to just sit there and go, okay, you got the Good Samaritan law. Why didn't you create the program for them?
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, hi. Sorry about that. Yeah, my name is Steve Amate, and I'm the executive director of the National Association of Security Companies. And so our members are primarily the largest security companies that operate in Maryland, and we were very instrumental in the passage and development of this legislation. And I would just say that, the legislation does say that the training programs of this section shall include training on the following, and then it provides a specific list that senators and delegates, there was debate over what to finally include, but these are the final requirements. And I agree with the comments that now for the commission to, one, add additional requirements. Is that legislating? I would say yes, and I think there could be pushback within the legislature. And B, is a duty to act something that is common or is even advisable for security officers? And there I would say no. The person who said, security officers are there to observe and report. That is their primary duty. I would also say that companies, knowing that they're subject to liability whenever there's an incident involving a security officer, many companies are already training on CPR and AED, but they're doing that because if there is an incident, someone will say, well, why didn't the security officer help? And more so, it'd be nice if the security officer did help, and a lot of times they will. But to create this duty to act is really, that just takes it up a huge notch, a level up in terms of liability concerns for companies, for officers, and it's really stepping into something that fundamentally and initially, as I said, the bill, the new law, does not require that. And if they wanted to require that, they could have put that in the law. So I think that's just, again, sure, security officers, should seek to render aid if it's possible, but there should not be this duty to render aid. And then there should not be a requirement for training either, unfortunately, because that's just not in the law. And so that's my perspective.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Martin?
So here's where I'm stuck. I pulled up the objectives, and best I can count, there's 16 of them. And 13 or 14 out of the 16 talk about use of force, talk about de-escalation, talk about people in crisis, talk about people with disability, talk about juveniles, right? And they talk about people in behavioral health concerns. So anybody who has worked in use of force over the past 5 years and coming up with objectives around use of force, all of these things that are listed are top line best practices. And so when you go into the meat of any training around these top line issues, the duty to intervene, and let's be clear, there's two different things, and Z brought up the two different things. There's one that's a duty to intervene, and then there's also just making people aware of some basic skills. And so I think I'm seeing a delineation in this what we're talking about here, and going back to the legislation and what they meant and everything. It doesn't have to be an objective that you have to train on, the rendering aid for it to be a best practice under you all's training curriculum. And so two questions. One question, when we see these objectives here, does the commission take these objectives and then create curriculum from them that's then going to be used to train these security officers? Is that how it works?
Good. No, ma'am. Like we do with all of them, whether it's a police academy or an in-service program or a special police program, they have to teach and develop their courses, test and train to the objectives.
Gotcha. So this document here, SG1 through SG16, would just be given to them, and then they would develop their own curriculum based on that, and whether they feel like they want to go by a best practice on duty to render aid or not is going to be up to them. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's currently written.
Okay, so I'll just end it with this, and Clyde, I see you coming for me. But if these objectives are talking about use of force, de-escalation, those sorts of things, if we're talking about liability, I don't know about y'all, but this is liability town. All of these issues. So I think that the liability carries when you're already talking to these people about how to handle people that are in crisis or a vulnerable situation.
Thank you. Mr. Boatwright.
Yeah, Ms. Martin, I'm not coming for you. I'm actually coming to support you in that. If we look at the objectives, The objectives are simply to address these issues where security guards or security officers did not have the proper de-escalation tools, and as a result, they took an action that has, you know, I can think of 4 cases off the bat in Baltimore City that have resulted in criminal charges for the security officer because they didn't have the proper. They don't understand the difference between a security officer has a duty to retreat. A police officer does not necessarily have a duty to retreat. At least that's the way I was taught. And understanding the differences of when to de-escalate a situation rather than, you know, aggravating a person who is in crisis. You know, our security personnel may not necessarily be trained on how to deal with a person in crisis, especially someone that is at a parking, you know, lot. As we talked about, sitting in a booth at a parking lot, they don't necessarily know how to deal with a person coming up to the window and just pounding on the window in crisis. And so if we're now requiring them to now have at least some basic level of understanding of that, that's fine. But when that person in crisis now falls unconscious, what do you want them to do? We want them to get on the phone and say, get us help now, not you know, try to take some sort of action. I want them to get away from that person, because again, they could either hurt themselves or hurt the person that's already in a crisis mode. And we just don't need additional victims at the scene.
So this is what I was saying. I'll leave it. And this is my last comment. I promise, Colonel. So what you just said, Clyde, I agree to a certain degree. I too own a security business and a lot of different contracts, right? Then why can't we just put here, identify techniques, same thing that's in almost all of these, identify techniques on how to or render aid, you know, and we can play with the wording on that. I just don't know how we do not touch the word aid, render in any of these objectives, especially of what we have been through the last 4 years in policing and security. Because right now, you know, the flavor for security, they don't like security guards now, right? That's why the insurances are off the chain if you're trying to get insurance for a security company, right? So I don't know how this body cannot acknowledge any wording when it deals with aid. I'm not saying you gotta do CPR, you gotta do an AD. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying something to say that security guard is doing something. And it could be the officer called 911 to get an ambulance for this person to get them aid. That's a technique. I'm just saying it's not addressed at all. And how can we not address it? I don't know how we can.
Thank you, Major Alford. Mr. Amity? You're muted again.
Sorry about that. I agree, but I mean, these are issues that should have been brought up, you know, during the months that the legislation was being, you know, developed. And they could have been, Major Alford, you could have testified at a hearing and made your point. But, you know, this was a carefully crafted bill. We had opposition to it. You know, there are people who say, oh, we don't feel we have to train our security officers, or we don't feel that we have to license and get our security officers certified. I mean, it was a compromise, and I think as someone said, this really, the whole genesis of this bill was because of these incidents where it seemed that security officers were just acting the absolute wrong way in incidents where there's a use of force. And so, you know, really the primary objectives of the legislators was to just make sure that all security officers, you know how to deal with certain situations where things can go bad and have some basic training. And that's why the focus was really on the use of force. And there really was never any discussion about, okay, what are some proactive things now we want security officers to do? Because it really is a recognition of the fact that, security officers are not police officers, and their primary duty is to observe and report, and that they just, but they also, if there is a situation where they could be getting into a physical altercation, they should know, they should at least have some training of how to avoid that. Use of force alternatives, de-escalation. And that really was the focus of the bill and these objectives to the, to the requirements in the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sykesville?
Colonel Butler, we've kind of been listening to all the discussion, and we pulled the actual document up, and for consideration, we've included language for a 17th objective, identify techniques on how to seek aid for a person in need that we feel is broad enough that it takes into account the actual roles and responsibilities of security officers without requiring them to perform a specific function.
Okay. I'm seeing a nod in the affirmative from Mr. Boatwright. A comment?
Yeah, is it proper for me to introduce a motion at this point?
Judging from all the discussion, I would say yes, it's appropriate.
Yeah, I would like to present a motion to add the 17th objective and approve the other 16 moving forward.
Second.
I think the second was Mr. Gibson.
Yes.
I think we've had an extensive amount of discussion. Shaka, could we move to the individual vote, please?
Mr. Boatwright,
Yes.
Sheriff Gamble,
Yes.
Ms. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Kojewski,
Yes.
Chief Chenner,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Keith Spalding,
Yes.
Mr. Leffler,
Yes.
Chief Collington, Chief Collington, Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Major Alford,
With the new addition, I emphatically say yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Dirk Butler,
Yes.
Ms. Radcliffe,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeweler,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Colonel Butler,
Yes.
Chief Collington,
We could give one more call for Chief Collington and then move on to the totaling of the vote.
Colonel, the motion carries, sir.
Thank you. And our last topic of the day, home detention unit objectives. Mr. Silver.
Colonel, the commission has heard my voice enough today. I'm going to turn over to the Deputy Director, Mr. Matthew Malady.
So now it's in the afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Finally, happy to say finally, we turn to the home detention unit training objectives. The correctional services article establishes a home detention program for certain non-violent offenders nearing the end of their sentence to actually finish the sentence while on home detention. The statute also gives home detention unit officers limited legal authority, really limited to two things. One, to arrest an individual who is in the home detention unit program, and two, to seek a search warrant to search for the individual in the program. With that in mind, the Division of Correction came to us here at the training center and asked that we develop a training program for them. The correctional services article requires them to receive training approved by the Police Training and Standards Commission to, in order for them to act within their authority to arrest and to get search warrants. In the past, they have put those individual officers through a police training academy. Police training academy, as you know, is 6-7 months long, if not longer, taking those officers off the street. Moreover, training academy equips them with training and skills and knowledge that they don't need, and that in our view far exceeds their legal authority within the program. So with that said, we met with them, we met with DOC leadership, we met with the home detention unit leadership as well, training staff here in our law enforcement training unit. And Mr. Silver and I worked with them to develop some training objectives that we think are appropriate, that meet the needs of home detention unit officers who are have certain legal authority in the community as opposed to in a prison. Develop these training objectives, and we're now presenting them to the commission for consideration and approval.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. I'm hoping that's because we all agree with everything, not because we're a little fatigued at the home stretch here.
No. The only question I have is they won't receive, they can't go to another police agency. They would have to go back through a whole academy, correct? They couldn't do.
Yes, sir. No, they would not. They'd have, if they wanted to go to a police department, they'd have to go to a police academy.
Okay. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Boatwright.
Yeah, just for clarity, this is not the home detention officers that are dual certified corrections and police. This is for the agents, the home detention agents. Is this for? Just want to know who this is specifically
That's
for.
correct. In fact, part of the misnomer is that there's a dual certification. These folks are never certified as police officers. They've only gone through a police academy. And our discussions with the commissioner of the DOC are that that is training they should not receive, that is not required and not necessary for this job. So while they've been through an academy, they are not certified police officers. They are only certified correctional officers.
So let me. So the people that are working in home detention, do they have the powers of arrest?
They have the powers of arrest limited to the individual they are supervising in the program.
So that's a bigger concern, because I was always under the impression that if they respond to a home and they see a kilo of cocaine in plain view, that they could take action and not call the local police department.
It's kind of like what we just talked about rendering aid. They should call the local police department. It's a violation of the program for the individual in the program. That individual can be arrested, but beyond that, they don't have the authority, the same authority as a police officer with regard to that, those drugs. If, however, they were in the individual's bedroom, the area of responsibility, that's obvious contraband, that sort of thing. They're not going to seize it. They're going to call local law enforcement. They're going to take the individual into custody and then, turn the rest of the matter over to local law enforcement. And you probably have that impression, because what we encountered in these meetings is that, having been through a police academy, many of these officers believed that they had police authority, and they simply do not.
Up until, badges and things like that, most of their stuff says police. So
when we started this conversation with the commissioner of the DOC, and he became aware of some of the things that were happening, by the end of our second meeting, he issued a cease and desist order outlining certain things that those officers were doing that they were to no longer do.
Mr. Gibson.
We have a motion and a second. Can we vote?
Ms. Hurley.
Hold up. I'm sorry. Where did the list come from again? Is it tracking something similar to the security guard objectives?
The law on the home detention program gives them the authority to do the two things I mentioned. In order to do those two things, we went through a number of objectives that we came up with. So it does not mirror their list, because in order to do those things, there's more that they need to be trained to do. One of the things is that they are equipped with emergency vehicles and emergency lights. So even though the statute doesn't reference that, we are requiring them to go through emergency vehicle operation course.
Okay. One reason I ask is because with the security guards, when we talk about use of force, we talk about what is use of force. I don't see that there. I mean, that's sort of a small thing, but it's so limited. Given a scenario, determine what level of force is justified.
That's a very good question. And here's the reason why that we didn't include it. We didn't include it because the law enforcement folks here are just that. They are law enforcement trainers. So what we asked of the commissioner is that use of force, firearms training, that kind of training that is unique to corrections, be conducted by the corrections trainers, not part of the training program that they want us to put on.
Okay, so the assumption is that they would already have had that training on what is use of force by the time they come and when is use of force appropriate.
That is correct. And referencing back to Mr. Boatwright's question, all of these folks are certified correctional officers. They've been through a correctional academy, right? And they've covered a lot of topics that teach them how to deal with incarcerated individuals. We saw no need to repeat any of that training here.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Chief Collington?
Yes, just for a point of clarification. So I get the whole idea that they are correctional officers, but when they become home detention officers and they have some additional authority to carry a gun, make an arrest of the individual under DOC's custody, has any of these guys, if you know, because I've seen them when I worked recruiting at my previous agency, has any of these guys, prior to you guys coming on, ever make it through a police department background and get certified as police officer, utilizing that training that you just mentioned that they get? Because
So
you
in fact,
did, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One of the concerns is that once they went through a police academy, they realized, well, I could become a police officer. And so there's been a certain amount of attrition where officers have left the DOC and they've gone to work for police departments.
Okay, so there are some out there that before you guys came on are certified officers right now. You're on mute.
Unit, but yes, there are folks that have left the agency to go to work as police officers, but they are not certified. Those that still work for the Division of Correction are not certified police officers.
Okay. All right. It sounds a little convoluted in the way that it's being presented, but I get it. I don't want to belabor the time.
Okay, Mr. Moses, I see you had your hand up again.
Yeah, the only concern I have is when we do these objectives that we're not based upon a job task analysis. And so for future, I think that we should think about, because we've done police objectives, we do corrections objectives, we do juvenile objectives, and it's all based upon a job task analysis. So if we could support this with down the road, not right now, because we need to do something about it. But I think the next time we need to have it based upon the job task to.
Mr. Moses, you're correct. There was not a formal job task analysis done, but what we did is more of a curriculum review process of this based on the functions authorized to be conducted by the home detention unit officers and the training they would need to do this. So we did more of a curriculum review, but I understand what you're saying about a formal job task analysis.
Thank you. If we could get back to that motion. That was seconded. That takes care of the discussion part. So I would move for a vote, Ms. Cross.
Mr. Boatright,
Yes.
Sheriff Gamble,
Yes.
Ms. Hurley,
Yes.
Ms. Kojewski,
Yes.
Chief Shinner,
Yes.
Hold on one second.
Gibson,
Yes.
Chief Spalding,
Yes.
Major Loeffler,
Yes.
Chief Collington,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Major Alford,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Dirk Butler,
Yes.
Ms. Radcliffe,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Jeweler,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Colonel Butler,
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Motion carries. And that was the final issue on the agenda for today.
Sir, Chief Shinner has something he'd like to bring up in addition.
Chief Shinner?
Thank you, Colonel, if it's appropriate. In a recent conference call between myself, the president of the Maryland Sheriff's Association, Joe Gamble, and the executive director of the Maryland Police and Maryland Sheriff's Association, we discussed a MOU that was going to be established between the Training Commission and Mount St. Mary's College. In the opinion of the chiefs and the Sheriff's Association, it's imperative for the Training Commission to try to re-engage and potentially move forward with this collaborative partnership with Mount St. Mary's College. The partnership would be great to assist public service safety agencies, large and small, from across Maryland, and provide high quality, consistent training to law enforcement professionals, corrections officers, and intelligence personnel. Moreover, the purpose of the MOU is consistent with the Maryland legislative intent on police reform, especially in House Bill 670, which included significant language for higher education for law enforcement officers. I had the privilege to speak with Professor Joe Vence of Mount St. Mary's College. He's with the Department of Sociology, Criminal Justice, and Human Services, who unequivocally stated that the college has a strong desire to move forward with this collaborative effort, noting that the funding for the training would be covered through a federal grant. With MPTC having the training facilities and the dorm space to accommodate students, creating an exceptional environment for higher education, Mount St. Mary's College has the professionals on staff to provide high quality and consistent training to Maryland law enforcement professionals, corrections officers, and intelligence personnel. Additionally, the cost of this would be absorbed through a grant. So it allows troopers, deputies, as well as police, corrections, and intelligence officers throughout Maryland, regardless of an agency's budget, to participate and benefit from this exceptional training. The result's going to be nothing short of outstanding, educated public safety personnel to provide high quality service to their agencies and communities. Really, this partnership doesn't seem to have any sort of downside. So both the Chiefs and the Sheriff's Association are urging MPTC, if they can, to re-engage this MOU and try to move forward with at least discussions with Mount St. Mary's College to provide this exceptional training.
Thank you, Chief Shinner. Sykesville?
Colonel Butler, Chief Shinner, the reason why we didn't move forward with the MOU was twofold. Number one, the commission never approved us to engage in an MOU with them. That's the first part. Number two, the MOU as provided to commission staff was vague, did not clearly identify responsibilities as far as who would pay for certain things and what were the responsibilities of each commission. And from a commission standpoint, it just really had never been approved, and there was nothing in there that identified the commission's role or function within it. So that's why we did not move forward with that when it was provided to us.
I appreciate that, but it seems like it would seem to be worth exploring with agency budgets, large and small, being what they are, to have this professional training that it appears to be would be free of cost to the agencies and the commission. It just It looks like it's something that we should be at least pursuing and having a discussion.
Sheriff Gamble.
So for those of us that are older in law enforcement, you remember the Hopkins program where you could earn a master's degree. I think a bachelor's at some point too, and then a master's degree in our field. This is a similar situation, except for it would provide a bachelor's degree. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, that you could go through take the courses online, and then eventually police officers could get a bachelor's degree through Mount St. Mary's. Is that accurate, Carl?
That's what we got from the conversation we had, Joe.
So when our associations met and discussed this, we thought, well, who would not want higher education? That's the intent of the General Assembly through all the police reform legislation. They want better educated police officers. So it's been represented to us that they have a grant to cover all the teaching, that type of thing. So I think it at the very least warrants further discussion, in my opinion.
Sykesville.
Colonel Butler, commission staff, we can certainly review this and look into it as requested. However, one of the concerns we had was just what Sheriff Gamble just alluded to, is that it seemed like it was a program where we really couldn't understand why interaction or an MOU with the commission was needed, because they already have the program established and they're paying for it. We did not, it was, as I said, it was very vague on exactly what the commission was providing other than the name of the commission.
Well, I think the education space was part of what, at least that's what was represented to Joe and I, that they could host these classes at the commission. And that was the purpose of the MOU.
Chief, that was not provided to us in the MOU.
I'm not saying it was. I'm just telling you that's from our discussion.
So it sounds like overall we're in a good place with the goals and objective of Mount St. Mary's. Is this something that the Police and Sheriff's Association could meet on a sidebar with the commission, construct a better document to make sure we're all pushing the same direction? Because the overarching need is there. We just want to make sure that everybody understands their obligation and responsibility in the whole thing. That being said, Mr. Boatwright.
Yeah, I just would like to ask Chief Shannon and Sheriff Gamble if we could be a part of that from the FOP. We would like to, join forces with that.
I would think that would be fine.
Yeah, Sheriff's Association would be in support of that. So
yeah, absolutely. Chiefs as well.
So if it's all right with you, Chief, and Mr. Boatwright, we can reach out to them, talk to them. We'll bring it back to the commission in April as far as what we get down in the weeds with them a little bit more. You okay with that, Colonel Butler?
Sounds good to me. Mr. Moses?
No, I just have another issue I want to discuss just real quickly.
Okay, let's put this
I'll
one
wait.
to bed.
Okay.
Mr. Silver, where do we stand with this one? Are we good with the further discussion to build the best mousetrap we can and attack this issue?
We can have further discussion, but it would be good if the commission gave us a voice vote to pursue or consider or work with the MSA, Maryland Sheriffs and Maryland Chiefs on the viability of doing something like this. Like I said, when we did it initially, the information was provided us was incredibly vague and non-specific on what was needed from the commission, if anything.
Understood. Can we get a quick voice vote, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the Maryland Chiefs, Maryland Sheriffs, and the FOP meet with Mount St. Mary's, come back to the commission with a plan and a recommendation.
I will second the motion.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
We do. I think we've had sufficient discussion. Can we move for a voice vote, please?
Certainly, Colonel. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. Mr. Moses, you said you had something else for discussion?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that in 2016 was the last time that the firearms regulations and qualification and all the mandates for it was looked at. And I think that for best practices, because in the use of force bill, it addressed best practices for the use of force. And I think that we should have the commission staff convene a committee made up of firearms instructors throughout the state to look at these things, because this day and time, we're under a microscope with the use of force.
Sounds good. Do you have any timeframes in mind?
Well, the commission staff is overwhelmed, so I'm going to confer when they think they could.
Ms. Silver?
Mr. Moses, we could probably get to that around 2027.
Can we make that a little quicker?
We can work it if the commission so chooses to test it.
I think that we're not falling.
In April, we can come back with a more of a time frame of when we could complete that task.
So at this point, where do we stand? Mission is agreed. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Colonel. We would need a motion for us to start a review of the firearms regulation.
Motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Can we do a voice vote on this one?
Certainly, Colonel. All in favor of the commission staff in association with firearms instructors throughout the state conducting a review of the firearms regulation, say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Hearing no opposition, the motion passes.
So, Colonel Butler, if I might, I'm going to channel my inner Rich Gibson here. For future purposes, and on a serious note, for future purposes, under the Open Meetings Act, we're required to publish the agenda in advance of the meetings. And really, we should stick to the agenda, because if someone had known that we were going to talk about these additional issues, they might have tuned into the meeting. So, for future purposes, I think we really need to stick to the agenda. And then if we want to table items or bring them up to the next agenda, it's just a very technical point. But under the Open Meetings Act, I think it's something that we should follow. If our AA agree.
Agreed. Yeah. And Colonel, we could always discuss and then table it for discussion and put it on the next meeting's agenda.
Let's just bring those two issues back up. I think we all know where we stand, but we don't want to prevent anybody from giving their input. So if we could add those two issues, the last two issues we discussed, to the next meeting, please.
Yes, Colonel, we will.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
There we go. Can we go for the voice vote, please?
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Those
Any
opposed?
No.
Bye, everyone.
Motion carries. Thank you all for your time.
Today, sir. Colonel, could you give me a call later today, sir?